rise. The Honorable Judge Alex Harris presiding. You may be seated. Today, February 28th, 2023, we have on our Amarillo College docket case number LGLA-1307-001 in the matter of the state versus law-abiding citizen. Before we begin to call any witnesses to the stand, I will let the prosecution give opening statements. State, you may proceed. The primary focal point of our case today is whether or not it is okay for a person, in this case, our defendant, Clyde Shelton, to take the law into his own hands whenever he feels the justice system has not been satisfactory. Our protagonist of this case, Nick Rice, the prosecuting district attorney, will ultimately do his best in bringing Shelton to justice the way he wished the perpetrators who murdered his family had been issued the same legal repercussions. Thank you, State. Defense? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, remember today it is the state's duty to prove my client's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. To convey my client's innocence, we will cover 4 key pieces of evidence: the area of law, ethical implications, legal staff objectives, and legal documents. Upon concluding this trial, we hope a verdict is reached that demonstrates relativity to law based on ethics, public policy matters, and possible preventative procedures. State, you may call your first witness. Your Honor, I would like to call the key witness to the stand.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. What is the primary area of law exhibited? Criminal law. What are the ethical implications granted by the key antagonist? The morality of street justice, also known as frontier justice, whether or not it is right to take the law into your own hands whenever the legal system doesn't work the way that you desire. No further questions. What other ethical implications can you think of, perhaps by the main protagonist? An abuse of power, both politically and legally, just because they're in a paid or elected position. Government officials, from politicians to judges and even lawyers or police, get to dictate other people's lives. With that being said, what are the legal tasks of the paralegals displayed? Research, drafting different documents, conducting interviews. Your witness. What about attorneys? Objection. Ambiguous. Sustained. State, care to rephrase the question? What are the roles assigned to attorneys in this matter? Both prosecutors and defense attorneys are to gather evidence as part of their due diligence, litigate for or against the defendant in court, and negotiate plea agreements if available. Could you name 5 of the legal documents that would need to be drafted? Objection. The case briefing only called for 3 legal documents that needed to be drafted. My client's not prepared to list 5. No, I can list 5, no problem. Overruled. Continue. 5 documents that prosecution would need to draft include, but aren't limited to, the initial charge or criminal complaint, a motion to deny bail due to the egregiousness of the crime committed, which in this case is murder, waiver of a preliminary hearing and plea agreement form for the party who agreed to trade testimony in exchange for a lighter sentence, and a DNA admission subpoena to gather DNA evidence from the crime scene. Thank you. You may step down. Before I give my final verdict on this case, would both the prosecution and the defense please approach the bench? State, what is the relativity to law based on ethics? Your Honor, there are 2 sides who are affected in this case, as with any criminal case, the victims and the defendants. The more fairness that is granted to the victim equals less fairness to the defendants and vice versa. The ultimate punishment and restitution for any given victim is the death penalty or a life sentence without parole for the defendant, which is not entirely fair to the defendant, while the best possible fair outcome for a defendant is to be declared not guilty without any legal ramifications, but there is no justice for the victims. Defense, what are the public policy concerns that we observed? There are 2 that come to mind immediately, Your Honor. Plea bargaining in the form of criminal testimony, or in layman's terms, snitching in order to get lighter incarceration sentences. And then secondly, government mandates of safety measures that violate citizens' natural and constitutional rights, such as citywide lockdowns and curfews. Thank you both. 3 possible preventative procedures that could have completely changed or omitted the conflict presented in today's case include, but are not limited to, discovery of substantial prosecutorial evidence, negation of any plea agreement, and a trial. In summation, with the return of a guilty plea, I sentence the defendant to 100 points on this presentation. Court is adjourned.